pull themselves up. Do you think that race plays a part in wealth distribution, or either a mindset that you can't or
Today?
cannot? Yeah.
No.
You don't?
No, I don't. I don't. You and I, we're proof. Why would race have anything to do with it? Put your mind to what you want to do and go for that. It's kind of like religion to me. It's a good excuse for not getting there.
Yeah. You know, I said, and it's probably get me in trouble, but I said to some of my colleagues recently, so I know that it's an issue, but it seems like every single day on television I'm talking about race, and it's because of the news cycle, it's in the news, but sometimes I get so tired of talking about it, I want to just go, this is over, can we move on? I want to just go, this is over, can we move on?
And if you talk about it, it exists.
Right.
Yeah. It's not like it exists and we refuse to talk about it, but making it a bigger issue than it needs to be is a problem we have.
But this sort of reminded me of what's happening with these Wall Street protests. And this is what you said from the Thomas Sowell Reader. This is the age of complaining classes, whether they are lawyers, community activists, radical feminists, race hustlers, or other squeaking wheels looking for oil. No society ever thrived because it had a large and growing class of parasites living off of those who produce. Is what we're hearing with these Wall Street protests just from this complaining class?
Oh, absolutely. I can't imagine that when I was their age that I would have enough money that I could afford to hang around in parks for weeks on end, not doing any work and not bringing in any income.
Well, and the incredible thing is,
stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me.
I know, and most people that I know, like blacks and whites, we work together. We go on vacations. We go to church together. There's no race problem. There's only a race problem when the media creates a race problem. And I think about myself. You know, I grew up in poverty, high school dropout, married at 16, went to a community college, and then went on to get other college degrees. I did not have anyone telling me that I was a victim, that because I was black, poor, female, that I couldn't do the things that I was able to ultimately do. I believed in America. I believed if I worked hard that I could achieve the American dream, which I did. And when I got to graduate school, that's when I learned the theories of oppression. I learned that I was black, I was poor, I was a woman, I was a mother, that I couldn't do the things that I had already done. Had I heard that at a different stage in my life, I'm not even sure I would have tried.
A black man.
But then black kids were asked this question. Is racism a big problem, a small problem, or no problem in your own daily life? This is again 1997. 90% said no problem or small problem in my own daily life. In fact, more black kids than white kids said failure to take advantage of available opportunities is a bigger problem than racism. That's 23 years ago. That's before the election of Obama and re-election of Obama. Speaking of whom, when he was senator, he gave a speech at a historically black college. And he talked about the amount of racism in America. And he said the Moses generation, referring to the generation of MLK, has gotten us 90% of the way there. We have, his generation, he called it the Joshua generation, have an additional 10% to go. I thought that was a pretty fair reflection of how much racism there was. 10% to go. This is before he became president. Now fast forward, racism, institutional racism, systemic racism, structural racism, use your favorite term. How do we go from 90% of the way there to racism now is pernicious, which is what Eric Holder said? What happened? What happened is they are trying to make you think like victims, so you pull that lever 95% for one particular party. Hard work wins.
New York Times writer Nicholas Kristof, I'm quoting you, asserts that there is you're quoting him, overwhelming evidence that centuries of racial subjugation still shape inequity in the 21st century, quote, closing quote, and he mentions, open quote, the lingering effects of slavery, close quote. And now this is Tom Sowell. If we wanted to be serious about evidence, we might compare where blacks stood 100 years after the end of slavery with where they stood after 30 years of the liberal welfare state.
Yes. Education. Stuyvesant High School in New York, as you know, you get into only by passing a very tough exam. In 2012, the percentage of black students who had gotten into Stuyvesant High School was less than 1/10 of the percentage of black students who had gotten into Stuyvesant High School 33 years earlier.
I didn't know that.
There's Dunbar High School in Washington, which was an elite black high school for a very long time. In 1993, the number of kids out of Dunbar High School who went on to college was less than it was 60 years earlier, which would have been in the depth of the Great Depression. And so,
I'll ask a question about unemployment. The latest figures I saw indicated that of black youth, something like 46% of those who wanted jobs were unable to get jobs. I really would like this time to ask both of you to respond to what would you do in that situation. If you would assume for a moment that these are people who do want jobs and are unable to find work.
I would, first of all, repeal the minimum wage law, because if you go back to, say, 1950, 1948, 49, 50, you find that at that time, the unemployment rate among black teenagers was a fraction of what it is today. And there certainly wasn't any less racism then than there is today. What was
Something wrong? There's plenty to be addressed.
Yeah, those same black kids who I was talking to at the beach and asked them these questions. I asked them, I said, how many unarmed black men do you think were killed by police last year? And one of the kids said, 1,500.
Gracious.
And I said, is police brutality the biggest issue facing the black community? He said, oh, of course. And then I said, well, what if I told you that it was only 9 unarmed black men that were killed by police? And he's like, what? No way. That can't be true. It's just, they're so misinformed to what's actually going on.
Whites want.
Yeah, and then they keep pushing those issues, and I don't know if you just saw this, but San Bernardino County, they labeled racism as a public health issue. Is that not just the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard?
It is. Racism is a public health issue, but it doesn't run in the way they think it is. It's the white liberal racism that's killing black people. They're killing black people. They're killing black youth. When they tell black youth that police officers are going to shoot them and, they can resist the authority and they need to be suspicious of authority, they're ruining people's lives. And that disrespect of authority starts in the classroom.
And it's the exact same thing with not even just the police, but the interactions between white people and black people. I went to a high school, middle school that was very diverse with lots of black kids, Mexican kids, white kids, and I never really had a problem or run-in with racism. But now these people are coming in and saying, oh, America's so racist. What is that telling these young black students? They're telling them that white people have a problem with them and that, black people should be scared of the white people. You're putting racism there where it wasn't before.
Hillary Clinton, so many others are now talking about reparations. Trump's a racist. It's race. Immigration policy's racist. The race word is the constant. It's like abortion and race in today's Democrat Party.
it is, and so I have the feeling that many Americans would just as soon not hear any more about race. But there are people for whom this is their ticket to whatever racket they're running, including the political racket. And it's tragic. What's tragic is that there are so many people out there who simply respond to words rather than ask themselves, is what this person says true? How can I check it? And so on.
Do you think that with that, Justice Smollett case in Chicago, and now we have this R. Kelly guy who's accused of, R. Kelly's not focusing on race, but the Smollett case became one about race. And it was almost like there were certain people out there who were disappointed when it seemed like this thing was a big hoax. They wanted this to be a racial incident, a racial hate crime, reinforcing the stereotypes that this is what's wrong with society today. The overriding problem in society today is one of race, Tom.
Well, it's like in football. They're going to run that play until someone finds a way to stop it. And as long as it pays off, they're going to keep doing it. What's painful to me is how few people there are today who bother to check out the facts. In many cases, just the smallest effort at checking out the facts would cause so many of these things to fall apart. And we have a whole history.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you all for attending. It is in more than interesting proposition that America is institutionally racist. And before I address the narrative, the emotion, the misconceptions, the misused facts or badly applied facts that have been put out here tonight, I'd like to start with a simple quote. There is a class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs. There is a certain class of race problem solvers who don't want the patient to get well. That was said by Booker T. Washington.
It's frustrating to me that people take race and they make it personal. You know what I mean? Like we're at a loss in this generation. If you look at it in the 80s, Archie Bunker was a stark racist. Stark. If you don't know who Archie Bunker is, look him up. All in the Family, great show. The Jeffersons, stark racist. Fred Sanford, stark racist. But you know what black people and white people did? They laughed. You watch 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte. Both of them hated each other because he was black and because he was white. You know what they did? They laughed.
Raised without much structure, young black men often reject education and gravitate towards the street culture, drugs, hustling, gangs. Nobody forces them to do that. Again, it is a personal decision.
He is right about that too. But in my estimation, he doesn't go far enough.
At the age of 12 years old, I shot myself. I was in the house. Police knocked on the door. I was right there. They knocked the door down. Everybody jumped over my body to go get the guns and drugs and whatever they could find. It took one guy to stop right there and cuss everybody that hopped over me out. Like, what the fuck are y'all doing? They say, oh, no, we was going to see if it... What the fuck are y'all doing? We called the ambulance. A fucking ambulance? Do you not see this kid on the floor with this hole in his chest? Say, you drive. Pick me up. Brought me to the hospital. He didn't drop me off at the ambulance and say, you take him. He brought me to the hospital room and made two and stood there and waited till the doctor said he's gonna make it. He said, don't worry, my name's Uncle Bob. He was white as snow. Them motherfuckers that hopped over me was blacker than me.
Was he a cop?
Yeah, he was a cop, and my life was saved by a white man. I don't know what racism is. I know a good motherfucker named Uncle Bob, though.
I know for a fact that so many talented African Americans who don't achieve their goals or they're prevented or deprived from achieving their big dreams because of their skin color. I'll give you an example, Globetrotters. They were much better basket players than the white guys, but they were not allowed to play in the big league.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think it is the problem is the racial discrimination?
The right word is not is, was.
Was.
And that's not the only problem. That's one of the problems. Now, you can make it the only one if you'd like, but it's not the only one. But that's a fact. That's a fact. They couldn't play basketball in the NBA. Well, their grandfathers couldn't walk on the sidewalk, or they were slaves. So each generation is trying to do better for the next generation.
I've never dealt with racism, and I'm glad I didn't have to.
But I asked you what the racial breakdown was of your audience. Do you remember this? You told me the only black face you could see in the whole audience was your makeup artist. I believe that's what you said. She was in the front row, right? A lot of white kids love rap.
Yes.
Explain that. What does that say to you? What's the message of it? What's the bigger picture of it?
I don't want to be bashed because I don't want to sound like I'm on the wrong if there is a side, but I thought that was clearly a message that there was no such thing as racism.
That's what I thought that meant. Blacks are convinced that the number one issue facing the country right now is social justice, racist white cops, discrimination, systemic racism, microaggression, whatever new word they come up with, and it's a bunch of nonsense. The number one problem domestically facing this country is a breakdown of the family. And President Obama said it. I didn't. A black kid, or kid, not just a black kid, a kid raised without a dad is 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crimes, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. So you're far more likely to end up in jail without having a dad than you are because of a white racist cop.
Prime example, I got pulled over by the police, come over to my window, flash his light in my face, hand on my pistol. I can handle that 2 ways. I can start yelling and screaming and tell him he a racist and he don't know me. You doing this wrong. Or I can say, yes, officer, no, officer, or we done, officer. And both of them are going to have drastically different outcomes.
Half the homicides in this country are committed by and against black people. Last year, there were 14,000 homicides. Not talking about suicides, I'm talking about homicides. Half of them were black, 96% of them black on black of that 7,000. Where's the Black Lives Matter people on that? Within Baltimore, where Freddie Gray was killed. Freddie Gray died in a van. I shouldn't say was killed. Died in a van. Yeah. You have a city that's 45% black. City council is 100% Democrat. The majority of city council is black. The top cop at the time was black. The number 2 cop was black. The majority of the command staff is black. The mayor is black. The AG is black. And yet here we are talking about racism. I mean, it's absurd. 965 people were shot by cops last year and killed. 4% of them were white cops shooting unarmed blacks. In Chicago in 2011, 21 people were shot and killed by cops. In 2015, there were 7. In Chicago, which is a third black, a third white, and a third Hispanic, 70% of the homicides are black on black. About 40 per month, almost 500 per year last year in Chicago, and 75% of them are unsolved. Where is the Black Lives Matter on that? The idea that a racist white cop and shooting unarmed black people is a peril to black people is BS.
Black History Month you find
ridiculous.
Why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? Well, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Do you want one?
No.
I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
I will always continue to say that riots are socially destructive and self-defeating. I'm still convinced that non-violence is the most potent weapon available to oppress people in their struggle for freedom and justice. I feel that violence will only create more social problems than they will solve.
Truth number 1, America is not a racist country. The people that continue to tell us that have a vested interest in racism. In fact, they're actively now importing Nigerians to come do racist acts in this country, a la Jussie Smollett, right? This is MAGA country. No, this is your prison cell. And I hope you rot in it, Jussie.
Very wealthy and fabulous. You hear this phrase, systemic racism, systemic oppression. You hear it on our college campuses. You hear it from very wealthy and fabulously famous sports stars. You hear it from media types. You hear it. First of all, what does that mean? And whatever it means, is it true?
It really has no meaning that can be specified and tested in the way that one tests hypotheses. It does remind me of the propaganda tactics of Joseph Goebbels during the age of the Nazis, in which he's supposed to have said that people will believe any lie if it's repeated long enough and loud enough. And that's what we're getting. I don't think, it's one of many words that I don't think even the people who use it have any clear idea what they're saying. Their purpose is served by having other people cave in. But what I see is that if the election goes to Biden, that there's a good chance that the Democrats will then control all the two branches of Congress and the White House. And considering the kinds of things that they're proposing, that could well be the point of no return for this country.